If Li Tianlong was a piece of trash, then what were they? Even worse than trash. Enough, this battle ends here, Li Wufeng said coldly. Qila was unfazed and simply proceeded to punch Li Tianlong's leg. The angrier and more heartbroken Madame Li was, the happier he felt. He would shatter her son's Dao heart in front of her. Seeing Qila ignore him, Li Wufeng was furious. He looked at the law enforcer and said, I'm their father and not an outsider. I have the right to interfere and end the battle. That's not written in the rules, Yi Lingling said coldly. Also, he's no longer part of your family. If you try to interfere, we will show the world what happens to those who break the rules and offend the Zongate sect. Li Wufeng's expression changed. This is a battle between the geniuses of the Zongate sect and the Li family. Even though you are their father, you cannot interfere, the law enforcer said. Hearing this, Li Wufeng's expression turned uglier. This law enforcer was clearly biased toward the Zongate sect. This meant that the Zongate sect was a force that even the law enforcers had to be wary of. At this moment, Qila laughed arrogantly. He raised Li Tianlong's broken body into the air. The latter's face was ashen, and his eyes were blank. Boom! Qi Li's aura finally erupted. A Saint Dao realm expert. 100-year-old Saint Dao realm expert. What kind of monster was this? Qi Li's words were indeed warranted. In comparison to him, they were all trash. What was going on with the disciples of the Zongate sect? Everyone was shocked senseless. I'll return this piece of trash to you. Qila threw the Li Tianlong at Li Wufeng. Boom! Li Wufeng hurriedly recovered from his shock. He raised his hands and a gentle force enveloped Li Tianlong. Then, he handed him over to Madame Li. However, his attention was not on Li Tianlong at all. He looked at Qila in a daze, and an indescribable feeling rose within his heart. How was Qila this strong? Had the Zongate sect reforged his talent, or had he misjudged his son's talent? Madame Li held Li Tianlong in her arms and looked at Qila in a daze, her eyes filled with unconcealable fear. The grand elder of the Li family was overjoyed. He had to make Qila return to the Li family at all costs, even if he had to kill Li Wufeng. 100-year-old Saint Dao realm expert was unheard of, and his future potential was boundless. This was a Dao Supreme realm expert in the making. The Grand Elder immediately sent a secret message to the others. He glanced at Madame Li. This B*TCH should be surrendered to Qila to fulfill his revenge. Then, he looked at Li Wufeng. It was time for a different person to lead the Li family. Qi Li's gaze swept across the crowd. Behind him, Chu Yu ran forward delightedly and stood beside Qila happily. Her aura erupted, and she said, Chu Yu of the Zongate sect challenges the Li family's geniuses under 1,000 years old. Boom! There was more than one 100-year-old Saint Dao realm expert. How terrifying was the Zongate sect! Looking at the two of them holding hands, countless geniuses wanted to cry. Why was there such a huge gap between them? Shui Ping also felt a little envious. He moved over to Yi Lingling. He smiled and said, Senior sister. His hand snuck over to try and hold Yi Lingling's hand. Pa! Yi Lingling raised her hand and slapped his hand away. The Grand Elder was so excited that he almost fainted. If he succeeded in getting Qila to return to the Li family, they would have two peerless geniuses. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. No matter what, he had to make it happen. As for Li Wufeng, Madame Li and Li Tianlong, they were no longer important. Your disciple Qila has revealed his cultivation level and shocked countless geniuses. You have been rewarded with the divine power, shocking death. The system's reward suddenly appeared. Chu Zan revealed a satisfied smile. Nurturing Qila had paid off. He checked his reward. This offensive divine power had a unique characteristic. The moment before its target died, they would feel endless fear. Chu Zan received his reward. With one strike, it would destroy the opponent's world, the laws within it, and their Dao. It was extremely overbearing. Now that Qila had revealed his strength and talent, he would attract the attention of certain people. Would geniuses on par with him suddenly appear in the heavenly sun world? Chu Zan was not too bothered by these minor things. His goal was to become strong enough to crush all existences. Any plan or scheme would be useless. Chunlin was preparing to break through to the Dao Supreme Realm, and was already in secluded cultivation. Chu Zan continued to stay in the courtyard, living his days leisurely. He was getting stronger by the day, and inching toward the next realm. Time passed by quickly, and another 10,000 years passed. Chunlin had finally broken through and reached the Dao Supreme Realm. Lai Tian was also working hard to become stronger, and was currently cultivating. The strength of the 4 divine beasts had also reached the advanced stage of the Tao creation realm. He had already reached the late stage Tao creation realm. During this time, Qila had already gotten his revenge, and recently, he had abandoned the Li family, shocking countless people. For the past 10,000 years, Qila had enjoyed the best treatment from the Li family. Even his father, Li Wufang, had been punished to kneel in the ancestral temple and repent. His punishment had not been lifted yet. At such a young age, Qila had already been appointed as the head of the Li family, though he did not accept it. In essence, his status was second only to the Li family's ancestor. Over the 10,000 years, he had been constantly using up the Li family's resources and treasures, and his cultivation had also improved by leaps and bounds. However, he was now abandoning the Li family. He said that he was a disciple of the Zongate sect, and had no reason to join the Li family, which left them feeling extremely aggrieved. Madame Li was dead. In order to win over Qila, they had even destroyed Madame Li's family. It was true that back then, Qila did not say outright that he had returned to the Li family, nor had he acknowledged the Li family's ancestors, but his actions and the things he enjoyed all indicated that he had. This was too infuriating. He had basically emptied them out, then abandoned them. The elders of the Li family vomited blood when they heard the news, and the ancestor of the Li family was left in a daze for a long time. Qila was really black-hearted. Was this something he had learned from the Zongate sect as well? Somewhere in the central section of the heavenly sun world, Qila and Chuyu held hands as they traveled along. A figure followed behind them, and Qila stopped in his tracks. The figure behind him immediately ran forward in a flattering manner. "Grandnephew, do you have anything you want?" The Grand Elder had a flattering smile on his face. Qila was completely speechless. "I already left the Li family, so why are you following me? If you want to restore the Li family's reputation, you can go ahead and attack." "What are you saying?" The Grand Elder said sternly. "You may not be a member of the Li family, but you are my grandnephew. It's perfectly normal for me to protect my grandnephew. The reputation of the Li family is unimportant in comparison." The Grand Elder said righteously, "Grandnephew, the heavenly sun world is dangerous, and a genius like you will definitely be targeted. Although there are rules in place, some people have their own methods of circumventing them." Qi Li's face darkened. The Grand Elder was like a stalker, constantly following him around. It was not good to really fall out with him. He had fallen out with the Li family, but did not want to fall out with the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder had asked him to return to the Li family, but he had not agreed. However, the Grand Elder still helped him take revenge against Madame Li, and also punished Li Wufang to kneel in the ancestral temple and repent. He was always thinking for Qi Li's best interests. The Grand Elder was also the reason why he had enjoyed all of the Li family's benefits. In such a situation, Qila did not want to return kindness with evil. He rubbed his forehead and ignored the Grand Elder. If the latter wanted to follow him around, then so be it. When he returned to visit his master, he would find a way to get rid of him. Chu Zan was currently preaching the Tao to the 4 divine beasts to help them break through to the Tao Supreme Realm, though to them, it was less of a breakthrough and more of a recovery of their former strength. Suddenly, Chu Zan felt something. At his level, he would be able to sense any schemes that involved him, so long as the person scheming was weaker than he was. A Tao Supreme Realm expert was scheming against him. It did not seem like it, as the sensation would not have been so weak. Was this person testing him through his personal disciples? Derive the karmic link that I've sensed. Chu Zan used the system's derivation function, and an image projection appeared in his mind. Somewhere in a desolate place stood a black stone house. Inside, there was a skinny old man sitting cross-legged. At this moment, the old man frowned. The Zongate sect's Qila and Chu Yu, they might make for good chess pieces, the old man muttered. After a while, a figure appeared outside the stone house. The old man gave that person a few instructions, and the figure disappeared. Several years later, the old man seemed to have sensed something again and left the stone house. The scene disappeared. Chu Zan narrowed his eyes. That old man was a Tao Supreme Realm expert, one of 6 that currently resided in the heavenly sun world. A few years later, he would take action personally to try and make Qila and Chuyu his pawns. Chu Zan was not bothered by him, but rather the mysterious force that seemed to influence these Tao Supreme Realm experts. Those were his true opponents. Derive the hands that move in the dark. The derivation will consume 1/10,000th of your origin energy. Do you want to continue? Quote. Chu Zan immediately refused. A 10,000th of the origin energy of a Tao Supreme Ruler was a very terrifying amount. This meant that the mysterious force was stronger than he was currently. It seemed that Qi Li's and Chu Yu's talent had finally attracted the attention of certain existences who wanted to make use of them. Furthermore, if such monstrous geniuses were not controlled in time, it was easy for unknown variables to occur in their scheme. Chu Zan sneered inwardly. They wanted to make his disciples pawns. How delusional. Although they were stronger than him now, Chu Zan believed that he would catch up soon. Moreover, it seemed like that mysterious force could not directly show themselves. Perhaps they were not in the heavenly sun world or the chaos. Chu Zan called Chunlin over. Go and protect little Lei. Little Lei is in danger. Chunlin asked, startled. There are some guys who want to use him and Chu Yu as pawns, Chu Zan yawned and said lazily. He passed a jade talisman to Chunlin and said, take this jade talisman with you. If a Tao Supreme Realm expert doesn't show up, then you don't need to show up either. The rest can be dealt with by the others. Yes, Sect Master. Chunlin took the jade talisman and left the valley. She did not probe the matter further. Such schemes involving Tao Supreme Rulers was not something she would try to interfere with. Time flowed like water, and another 100,000 years passed. After Chunlin left, she returned once every 10,000 years. She continued to protect Qila and Chu Yu. That Tao Supreme Realm expert had been scared away by Chunlin during this time, and the other party realized how mysterious and powerful the Zongate sect was. Those two disciples were protected by a Tao Supreme Realm expert. Naturally, this Supreme Realm expert did not continue to act. After all, that mysterious force did not control him outright, but simply guided him toward certain actions. The Li family's ancestor had also tried to capture Qila and bring him back to the Li family. In the end, he was scared away by a wisp of Chunlin's aura and never appeared again. Once he returned to the Li family's territory, he passed down instructions to ensure that no one would offend Qila. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping were the frontrunners of their generation, while Qila and Chu Yu were the frontrunners of the younger generation. The Zongate sect's fame continued to spread far and wide. Lai Tian was also about to break through and reach the Tao Supreme Realm, and the four divine beasts, the heavenly spirit cat, the spirit-devouring flower and the sky-shaking golden rock had done so thousands of years ago. Chu Zan drank his tea and used the system's derivation function. Derive the appearance and location of the mysterious force. It does not have a single form, and it is not in heavenly sun world or the chaos. Since the derivation no longer required the consumption of origin energy, it meant that Chu Zan was no longer weaker than his opponent. However, it did not have a single form. Chu Zan was startled. This person's methods were impressive. The other party's existence in this special form was probably to avoid certain constraints, right? In any case, now that he was not weaker than the other party, things would be much safer. Chu Zan observed the 3,000 masses of chaotic energy of creation in his body, which had expanded more than 1,000 times. Moreover, other than the first world, there were many more worlds that had been created within them. There were a total of 3,000 worlds. More than 100 had already given birth to life, and Chu Zan's strength had already reached the peak of the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. The moment the first life form was born, Chu Zan would transcend the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. The first world was close to this. Chu Zan had already sensed it as the laws of the great Tao in the first world were being perfected. Derive if there are any existences that have surpassed the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. Chu Zan used the system's derivation function. There are none. Chu Zan heaved a sigh of relief. Soon, he would be invincible once more. No matter what those guys schemed or did, it would not be able to affect him. Derive if there will be other existences that surpass the Tao Supreme Ruler realm within 10,000 years. None. Derive if there will be other existences that surpass the Tao Supreme Ruler realm within 100,000 years. Uncertain. Within 100,000 years, there might not be an expert who surpassed the Tao Supreme Ruler realm, but it might not be impossible. After all, the future was always full of variables. Chu Zan pondered for a moment before saying, derive if there will be other existences that surpass the Tao Supreme Ruler realm within 1,000,000 years. 1% of the total origin energy will be consumed. Do you wish to continue? Chu Zan cancelled the derivation. When he saw the results, he warned himself not to be too careless. Within 1,000,000 years, there would be experts who surpassed the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. Still, 1,000,000 years was plenty of time for him to become stronger. What was the purpose of the great battle between Heavenly Sun World and the Chaos? Chu Zan was still very curious about the great battle that shattered the chaos and sealed the Heavenly Sun World. He had his guesses, but wanted to confirm them. Unifying yin and yang, opening up a new world, and opening up a new path. It was just as he had guessed. Fortunately, he had already discovered the path to the next realm thanks to the system, and would not need to engineer something like the Great Battle. He looked at the void region where the origin Great Tao was. It had already enveloped the original chaos, and was constantly improving and transforming. What is the void region? Derivation requires the consumption of all origin energy and vitality. Do you wish to continue? Chu Zan was shocked. He was a peak-level Tao Supreme Ruler, yet he would have to sacrifice his life to complete this derivation. Chu Zan cancelled the derivation request. However, his curiosity regarding the void region had been piqued. It was boundless and empty. Beyond the chaos was the void region, but what was outside the heavenly sun world? Looking up at the sky, the sun of the heavenly sun world was high in the sky, and the stars could be seen at night. That was the evolution of the transcendent laws. Even as a peak-level Tao Supreme Ruler, he could not see beyond the sky of the heavenly sun world. Was there also a void region beyond the sky? Derive the scene outside the heavenly sun world. Chu Zan immediately used the derivation function. In his mind, an image appeared. It was empty. As expected, the heavenly sun world and the chaos were both in the void region. The void region was the greatest unknown and held the most mystery, which was probably why many Tao Supreme Rulers were exploring the void region. Chu Zan did not continue. He already knew what he needed to know. As the situation continued to develop, he believed that the changes in the heavenly sun world and the chaos would continue to intensify. That mysterious force was driving the development of the situation. Chu Zan believed that after the other party was unable to control Qila and Chu Yu, they would definitely nurture new talents to counterbalance the variable that was his two disciples. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping also became stronger and stronger, and their fate energy became more and more abundant. Gradually, the gap between them and other geniuses widened. However, they were both law enforcers, so the mysterious force believed that they could control them. The only uncertainties at the moment were Qila and Chu Yu. Chu Zan sipped his tea and closed his eyes, feeling at ease. 784 Unifying the Chaos Part 1. Chu Zan lived an ordinary and leisurely life in the valley as the situation in the outside world continued to develop. There were changes in the chaos as well, and there were now only 3 chaoses left. The chaos where the heavenly Tao was located had all sorts of forces mixed together, and the situation was turbulent. Even though the heavenly Tao was the most powerful faction, it had not been able to truly unify the chaos. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Somewhere in the chaos, Ding Yu was sitting cross-legged on the back of a chaotic being. There was a sword on his leg. It looked illusory, but also seemed tangible. Wisps of sword intent swirled around Ding Yu's body. Ding Yu's heart had nothing but the sword. The deeper his comprehension became, the more Ding Yu felt that his master's teachings were so profound. He sighed. He was still far from mastering the sword Tao. Ding Yu had recently realized that he had been too obsessed with the concept of no woman and that it had constrained him. Therefore, he was revisiting and reviewing his sword Tao once more. The Great Chaos era was about to arrive, and their chaos would soon have to compete against the 2 larger chaoses. Before that happened, they had to unify this chaos. Only in this way could they compete with the other 2 chaoses. Otherwise, their forces would be scattered and it would be easy for allegiances to change, which would make the entire situation far more unpredictable. Currently, the heavenly Tao could not unify the chaos as their forces did not have enough strength to suppress the other forces. Although Heiyu was strong, and her methods were ruthless and brilliant, the chaos was now immense, and it would take a long time for them to completely unify the world. Ding Yu had a premonition that the Great Chaos era would soon arrive. Therefore, they needed to speed things up and improve the overall strength of the heavenly Tao. I'm the eldest disciple of the Zon Gate sect, so I should be the one to suppress its enemies. Junior sister, junior brothers, just wait for me. I'll sweep away our enemies and unify the chaos for the heavenly Tao. He was well aware of his own strengths. He was not good at scheming, planning or coordinating. However, he was good at fighting. Therefore, he would become the sword of the heavenly Tao in the Zon Gate sect. Everything else would be left to Heiyu, and now Chu. Chu was a cunning old man. He was weaker than Heiyu, but more skilled than her when it came to cunning and treachery. 90% of the insidious actions of the heavenly Tao were Chu's work. Other than Chu, there was another person who was good at scheming. Hong. This guy was also an old sly fellow. Furthermore, he admired Chu very much and often sought him out to learn about scheming and how to hook up with female experts. Before he had broken through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, Hong had once seduced another female Chaos Supreme Realm cultivator and tricked her into joining the Heavenly Tao's side. His descendant, Hong Yuanchu, had also gradually gone astray. He started to copy his own ancestor and recently went to the opposite force to hook up with a certain female expert. Ding Yu despised these guys in his heart. Weaklings were weaklings. A female expert on the other side was actually begging him to marry her as a Tao companion. As long as he married her, she would immediately switch sides to the Heavenly Tao. What a joke, as if he was such a person. How could he be tied down by a woman? Time flew by, and Ding Yu was still sitting cross-legged on the back of the chaotic being. The sword that was placed horizontally in front of him seemed to have disappeared. Instead, Ding Yu's entire body seemed to have turned into a sword that was waiting to be unsheathed. 100 million years had passed. Even though a few great wars had broken out in the chaos, he remained unmoved. It was as if he had disappeared into the chaos. Even the chaotic beings and countless experts seemed to have forgotten about his existence. Ding Yu was in a wonderful state. 100 million years in the chaos seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. A billion years passed, yet the chaos had yet to be completely unified. The remaining forces and experts had already formed an alliance to fight against the Heavenly Tao. At this moment, it was all about strength. However, the Heavenly Tao did not have the power to suppress everything. Ding Yu had disappeared for more than a billion years. He Yu looked at the chaos in silence. She did not know where Ding Yu was. 785 Unifying the Chaos Part 2. Is senior brother Ding Yu about to break through? Xiao Liang walked over and asked He Yu. He and Ding Yu had been competing and learning from each other since they joined the Zongate sect, and they had always been evenly matched. He was still a long way from a breakthrough, yet Ding Yu was about to break through. Exclamation mark! Was Ding Yu going to surpass him? His sword Tao is pure, He Yu said. There were many sword cultivators in the chaos, both in the opposing faction and the Heavenly Tao. However, when it came to the purity and dedication toward the sword Tao, none of them could compare to Ding Yu. On a certain day, He Yu and the others were discussing the next step of the plan. Suddenly, the light of the Heavenly Tao shone and erupted with a sharp aura. In an instant, the Heavenly Tao suddenly improved, devouring and destroying the other supreme laws of the chaos. It was becoming the only supreme law of the chaos. It was also at this moment that a sword beam seemed to cut through the chaos. His sword Great Tao appeared in the chaos silently, and was different from the Great Tao of the chaos. It seemed to contain everything, as if it was a true Great Tao, and not something established based on the Great Tao of the chaos or the Heavenly Tao. Had he reached the Tao creation realm? I am Ding Yu of the Zongate sect, and I will create the supreme sword Tao today. A voice echoed throughout the chaos. Suddenly, everyone recalled his existence, and the fact that he was the #1 sword cultivator in the entire chaos. Another 100,000 years passed, and Chu Zan reached the 300,000-year milestone. Lai Tian had already broken through to the Tao Supreme Realm. After his breakthrough, he had been stabilizing his cultivation in seclusion, as he tried to catch up to Chunlin. Your disciple, Ding Yu, created a supreme sword Tao in the chaos and broke through to the Tao creation realm. You have been rewarded with the singular sword of heaven. The system's notification suddenly appeared. Chu Zan was stunned. Ding Yu had broken through to the Tao creation realm and created a supreme sword Tao. It seemed that as long as he managed to solidify his cultivation foundation, and perfect yin and yang, he would definitely be able to break through to the Tao supreme realm. Chu Zan sighed. His eldest disciple had finally been able to secure his position as the eldest senior brother of the Zongate sect. It was out of Chu Zan's expectations that Ding Yu would be the first to break through, but it was not a bad thing. His heart and devotion to the sword Tao had resulted in his comprehension exceeding the other disciples. Chu Zan received his reward. Singular sword of heaven. Using this sword technique, he could even kill a Tao supreme ruler. Chu Zan took out the heavenly Tao talisman. It was no longer the same as before, and had no specific shape. Chu Zan extended his hand and sent a wisp of his consciousness into the heavenly Tao. Since Ding Yu had reached the Tao creation realm, He Yu and the others would not be too far behind. It was time to pass down the complete cultivation path that would help his disciples lay the foundation for them to break through to the Tao Supreme Realm. After all the arrangements were made, Chu Zan looked at the border between Heavenly Sun World and the chaos, and observed as the energies from both sides intermingled even more. The fusion of yin and yang and the opening of a new world had already begun. In the end, it would be the geniuses from the heavenly sun world who would step into the chaos, and the geniuses from the chaos who would enter the heavenly sun world, fighting each other as they completed the fusion of yin and yang to open up a new world and a new path. Moreover, Chuzan discovered that the time flow in the chaos was getting closer to the time flow in the heavenly sun world. Chuzan looked at it for a while and then stopped paying attention. No matter how the situation developed, it would not affect him. He had disciples in both the chaos and the heavenly sun world. Furthermore, in the void region, the origin Great Tao was growing and expanding. Given time, it would likely envelope both the chaos and heavenly sun world. Now, the heavenly sun world and the chaos was the stage for his disciples. Lai Tian floated out, "Sect Master, can I go out and travel the world for a bit?" After breaking through, he wanted to leave the valley and get some fresh air. Chuzan nodded, and Lai Tian immediately left the valley. He could finally take a look around the heavenly sun world. When he was at his peak, he was only an early-stage Tao creation realm expert. Now, he was a Tao Supreme realm expert. Lai Tian sighed inwardly. "I wonder if there's anyone in this world who still remembers me." Back then, he was also a famous expert in the human race. In the current heavenly sun world, the humans were the most powerful, followed by the Fae. The once powerful clans had either merged with the Fae, or had been reduced to insignificant small clans. The reason why the human race was so powerful now was related to the ruler of the heavenly sun world, the legendary existence of the human race. In that great battle, the Fae race's overall strength was greatly damaged. Many of the other powerful clans were also destroyed, and those that had not been destroyed declined. Lai Tian sighed. He wondered if he would have a chance to reach the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. The Fae race also had Tao Supreme Rulers back then. Otherwise, they would not have been so powerful. The 4 divine beasts were legends from an extremely long time ago, and were undoubtedly Tao Supreme Rulers. When he thought of the 4 divine beasts in the valley, he felt that their origins were mysterious. Were they perhaps the reincarnation of the 4 divine beasts of ancient times? Lai Tian reminisced as he traveled around in a carefree manner. Suddenly, he stopped, and his eyes revealed a look of shock as he sensed a weird feeling urging him to follow the times, or he would be doomed. Something was wrong. What was this inexplicable feeling? Did other Tao Supreme Realm experts encounter the same feeling? That feeling was not strong. However, it was real. What was rather terrifying was that if he did not follow the times, his mind would be clouded with unhappy things that had been suppressed in his heart. Moreover, the longer this persisted, the more serious it became. As time passed, he would inevitably become agitated, hot-tempered, and unstable. Only by following the times could one's state of mind be smooth and one's mind calm. However, if he went along with it, would he not be slowly controlled by whoever was behind this feeling? Imperceptibly, it would affect his actions. Then, he realized that in the valley, there was no such feeling. It was only after coming out of the valley that he was slowly affected by the mysterious force. 786 Stories of the Past. Lai Tian's heart was unable to calm down. The deeper he thought about it, the more creeped out he felt. Those at the Tao Supreme Realm were able to sense the influence of the mysterious force, while those below that realm could not detect it at all. Lai Tian recalled the series of events that had happened before the Great Battle. The person from the chaos and the other from the heavenly sun world were in love, but they were broken up by someone, and in the end, that conflict became the precursor to the Great Battle. Was that mysterious force also at play then? Were the master of the chaos and the ruler of the heavenly sun world also affected? Back then, almost all of the Tao creation realm experts had participated in the Great Battle. Logically speaking, Tao creation realm cultivators should not have participated in a battle involving Tao Supreme Realm cultivators, yet they did. Lai Tian thought of himself. He had participated in the Great Battle for the sake of the human race. Back then, when the Fae race's Tao Supreme Realm had attacked her, he had joined the battle in anger and ignored any advice. Even though she told him to stay away, Lai Tian did not manage to escape in the end. Instead, he became more and more violent as he fought, and killed his way into the void region. He killed a few Tao creation realm experts of the Fae race and made a name for himself. Now that he thought about it, Lai Tian felt a chill run down his spine. He had joined the battle for her, yet did not heed her advice. Something was amiss here. Lai Tian looked back on his life. Everyone said that he was overbearing, unparalleled, brash, and loyal. He rose from the bottom, made many friends and had many brothers. Along the way, there were traitors and deaths of close ones. In the end, he did not have many true brothers and friends. He looked arrogant and overbearing, but he was actually a careful person. He knew how to observe the situation and escape in time, fleeing danger. Otherwise, how could he have risen from the bottom? If he was really brash, he would have been killed long ago. It was not just once or twice that he had been backstabbed by his brothers, yet he had survived each time. When she was attacked, he attacked in anger and participated in the great battle. In the past, Lai Tian did not feel that there was any problem. He was such a person. For a friend who would die for him, he would give up his life to help. His big sister had been attacked, so how could he not take revenge on the Fey race? However, he had always listened to his big sister. She had tried to persuade him several times, but he had stuck out his neck and insisted on participating. He did not realize that there was a problem, and he did not realize that his big sister wanted him to run away. This was very wrong. Now that he had broken through to the Tao Supreme Realm, he could sense the influence of the mysterious force. The more Lai Tian thought about it, the more he realized that he had been influenced by something or someone and had lost his usual edge. In the end, his recklessness had been his downfall. The Tao Creation Realm experts back then must have suffered the same fate. Were the Tao Supreme Realm experts also helpless? Lai Tian did not dare to stay any longer, and immediately returned to the valley. The outside world was too terrifying. Had Chunlin been affected by this mysterious force after being away for so many years? What about Yi Lingling and the other 3 disciples? They were still weak. He had to tell the sect master. It was as if Lai Tian had discovered the greatest secret of the world. The moment he came back, he went over to Chu Zan with an extremely serious expression. Sect master, things are bad. This heavenly sun world is very strange. Chu Zan glanced at him. Lai Tian had only gone out for a while before running back here. This was within his expectations. You felt it, he yawned. Lai Tian was stunned. Sect master, you know. I know, why? Since sect master is aware of it, then Chunlin and little Yi. Lai Tian was stunned for a moment before he continued. That guy can't affect the Zon Gate sect. Chu Zan looked at him like he was an idiot. Lai Tian's mouth twitched. He suddenly came to a realization. Since Chu Zan already knew, how could he let the disciples of the Zon Gate sect be affected? This shocked him. What level had Chu Zan reached? Sect master, what's going on? Lai Tian thought back. Was it the influence of some existence, or was it the transcendent laws of the heavenly sun world? He was inclined to the former. That kind of unseen influence did not seem to be brought about by the transcendent laws. During the great battle back then, almost all of the Tao Creation Realm experts participated. I suddenly realized that the great battle was affected by this mysterious force, Lai Tian said with a dark expression. Chu Zan raised an eyebrow. He did not expect the mysterious force to have been at it even before the great battle. It seemed that this mysterious force had even schemed against the Tao Supreme rulers. Chu Zan thought for a moment and understood why a war was started. Only by breaking the set order and peace between the heavenly sun world and the chaos could the plan to unify the heavenly sun world and the chaos be put into motion. The master of the chaos, the ruler of the heavenly sun world, and those Tao Supreme Realm cultivators might not have all died. If so, then they were neither in the chaos nor in the heavenly sun world, which was probably to avoid the influence of the mysterious force. They would likely reappear when the heavenly sun world and the chaos fused, especially the Tao Supreme rulers. They would not miss the birth of the new world and the opening of the new path. Moreover, they would likely try to stop the mysterious force. After all, this force was too terrifying. 787 The path forward. If that mysterious force succeeded, it would truly reign supreme in the new world, controlling all life. Even Tao Supreme rulers would not be able to escape. This person was truly amazing. Chu Zan could not help but sigh. Even though his current strength had probably already surpassed his opponent, he was unable to deal with the latter, as he could not even locate the mysterious force. The transcendent laws of the heavenly sun world were probably already under its control, if not fully, then at least partially. The 6 Tao Supreme Realm cultivators left in the heavenly sun world were probably pawns that this person had deliberately left behind to maintain order and to carry out his plan. Moreover, Chu Zan had some understanding of these Tao Supreme Realm experts. Back then, they were considered relatively useless. He had broken through to the Supreme Realm by relying on luck and external forces. Those opportunities probably came from that mysterious force. It was really a good method. What a far-reaching plan. Chuzan found it more and more interesting. If they discovered that the Zongate sect that appeared out of nowhere was not affected by it, how would they view the Zongate sect? Would they mistakenly believe that the Zongate sect was prepared by the other Tao Supreme rulers to resist the mysterious force? The Master of the Chaos and his people should have made their own arrangements and taken action, right? Perhaps not in the Heavenly Sun world, but in the Chaos. Chuzan suddenly realized that he was the one hiding behind the scenes and interfering with the chess game. No one knew that he was a third party. When both sides found out the truth, what kind of expressions would they have? Chuzan found it more and more interesting. He was the biggest mastermind at work here. That person can't affect the Zongate sect. Of course, we have to keep a low profile and not interfere with the development of the big picture. Chuzan threw a jade talisman over to Lai Tian, which the latter gratefully took and said, "I understand, sect master." He placed the jade talisman in his divine soul, and then prepared to leave the valley again. "Take it easy, don't make a big commotion. I won't leave this place to rescue others," Chuzan reminded him. "Sect master, don't worry. I know my way around, and will be able to handle almost anything," Lai Tian said confidently. "All right, take it easy then." Chuzan waved his hand. Lai Tian chuckled and immediately left the valley. This time, after leaving the valley, the influence of the mysterious force no longer affected him. Lai Tian sighed inwardly. Chuzan was becoming more and more unfathomable. A simple jade talisman had freed him from the influence of the mysterious force. Lai Tian even suspected that Chuzan had already transcended the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. The valley regained its peace. As usual, Chuzan was living a carefree life. Su Shaner had already touched upon the boundaries of the Tao creation realm, and would likely break through within 10,000 years. Chuzan could roughly guess why Lai Tian had gone out. He was probably looking for his backer to see if she was still alive. Chuzan felt that this was likely to be the case. She was able to protect Lai Tian and arrange for him to stay at the edge of the chaos, devour the chaotic spiritual energy, and complete his yin and yang. All of this pointed to the fact that she was extraordinary. Ever since Ding Yu broke through to the Tao creation realm, the Heavenly Tao talisman had been constantly transforming and improving. The Heavenly Tao was becoming the only supreme law of the chaos, but it would still take time. Time flew by, and 10,000 years passed. Su Shaner had created her Tao. In the primordial chaos, Heiyu had also created her own Tao. The Heavenly Tao had become the only power in the chaos after unifying the chaos. The Great Chaos Era was about to arrive. Once the three remaining chaoses collided and fused, it would become even more vast and huge than before the chaos shattered. The chaos that had crumbled had been constantly growing and expanding. Chuzan did not pay much attention to how the situation in the chaos would develop. Now that the Heavenly Tao had become the only supreme law of the chaos, and unified the chaos, it was ready to face the forces of the other two larger chaoses. There were probably many forces in those chaoses, but if the other two chaoses were not unified, then the Heavenly Tao still had a great advantage. The situation in the Heavenly Sun world was getting more and more intense. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping were on their way to the transcendent Tao realm. Qi Li's cultivation level improved by leaps and bounds. Chu Yu fell behind slightly. However, she was still far ahead of the other geniuses. In the past 1,000 years, a few more monstrous geniuses had emerged in the Heavenly Sun world that were capable of competing against Qile and Chu Yu. Chuzan was looking forward to seeing it all come together. 10,000 more years passed, and Wang Luo and his other disciples also created their own Taos, as the three chaoses began to collide with each other. The Grand Chaos Calamity and the Great Chaos Era had arrived. The 500,000-year milestone had arrived. Although Chuzan had not broken through and reached the heavenly realm, his strength had already surpassed the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. He possessed the strength of an early-stage minor heavenly realm expert. The first world in the 3,000 masses of chaotic energy of creation had finally given birth to a life form. 3,000 worlds, 3,000 lifeforms, and every lifeform was different. For the time being, these lifeforms did not possess high intelligence, only instinct. Within one of those worlds, a human being was born. Chuzan had high hopes for that human. He would probably be the first lifeform with high intelligence. You stayed at home for 500,000 years and created a new record. You cultivated outstanding disciples and created the Zongate sect. You have been rewarded with the Heavenly Techniques record. Chuzan checked the reward. The Heavenly Techniques record was the cultivation method of the heavenly realm, and included methods to create worlds and the methods to take shortcuts. It also included the use of the powers of the heavenly realm, divine powers, and offensive techniques. With this, he could make up for the lack of techniques beyond the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. Chu Zan received his reward. It was a thick book. When he flipped open the book, what he saw was not just pages of paper, but worlds. This was a secret manual, but also an extremely powerful treasure. Chu Zan was currently cultivating toward reaching the heavenly realm, so he was pioneering a new path. He relied on the deduction of the next realm and the information he obtained to slowly explore and cultivate. With this book, one could directly comprehend the secrets of the heavenly realm. As Chu Zan read the book, he discovered that even the first page was filled with endless insights regarding breaking through to the heavenly realm and creating worlds. With a single thought, the worlds that had given birth to lifeforms once again began to show signs of creation. Initially, only one lifeform was born. Slowly, a new lifeform was born. If the first lifeform born was a male, then the one born now would be female, and vice versa. This was the balance of yin and yang. A woman was suddenly born in the world where the human being had been born, and this scene repeated itself in the other worlds with different races. The first pair of lifeforms began to reproduce and create their own race. In the human world, the first human was already looking at the sky, comprehending the principles of the world, creating characters, and so on. The other worlds that had yet to give birth to life were also in the process of forming. It was believed that in the near future, life would be born one after another. In the years to come, Chu Zan continued to read the book, and the number of lifeforms began to increase. Whole races began to appear in each world. However, because the worlds were so big, and there were too few living creatures, these races did not encounter each other yet. There were still too few lifeforms that possessed intelligence. Only the first human in the human world had begun to explore the world and seek the ways of cultivation. Their children had already appeared, and a small tribe began to take shape. One year, the human left his territory and began his journey of exploring the world. In another world, there was a fight. A giant beast race encountered a relatively small beast race, and there was conflict. The giant beasts devoured the smaller beasts. From then on, the law of the jungle came into being. The rules of development for the species in the worlds began to appear. 788 Stepping Stones. Chu Zan spent 1,000 years finishing the first page. Then, he made a small adjustment to the direction of his cultivation. Although he was not reading all the time, it took him 1,000 years to finish a page. This showed just how profound the book was. Chu Zan added another floor to the Zan Gate Scripture Pavilion. He copied the page he had finished reading into a golden page and placed it on the highest floor. Another 1,000 years later, Chu Zan finished reading the second page. However, he did not make a copy of it. A single page would be enough for now. Within the Zan Gate sect, there was no one who was close to the heavenly realm. This single page and floor was just something that would motivate them to strive and improve. On a certain day, Chunlin and Lai Tian returned. The situation in the heavenly sun world was getting more and more intense. Even if they were not affected by the mysterious force, it was easy for them to be caught within it. After all, even if they were not under control, others were. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping were about to reach the transcendent Tao realm. In the current heavenly sun world, they were also top experts. Qila and Chu Yu's cultivation was also progressing smoothly. They no longer needed guardians, as no one dared to break the rules and attack the disciples of the Zan Gate sect, not even the Tao Supreme Realm experts. They were extremely wary of the Zan Gate sect. Furthermore, Yi Lingling and Shui Ping were also law enforcers. Chunlin and Lai Tian had returned to cultivate in seclusion. Even if they were Tao Supreme Realm experts, they were still too weak. Only those at the Tao Supreme Ruler realm had a chance of withstanding the coming storm. In the past, Lai Tian did not even have much hope of reaching the Tao Supreme Realm, let alone the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. Chun Lan was the heir to Cloud Mountain Palace and had inherited the legacy of a Tao Supreme Realm expert. She had extraordinary talent and had the chance to reach the Tao Supreme Realm. However, the Tao Supreme Ruler realm had still been beyond her grasp. Now, the two of them were filled with fighting spirit. The Tao Supreme Ruler realm was no longer out of reach. Even though it was still a stretch, they had the tools and methods to reach this realm. The Zan Gate Scripture Pavilion had the secret manuals for the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. I thought that Qila was already an unrivaled genius. I didn't expect another genius on par with him to appear. Lai Tian sighed. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the situation in the heavenly sun world was too complicated. An old man like him should not get too involved in it, or he would drown. Until he had sufficient strength, it was best for him to stay in the valley. Chuzan was not surprised. Qi Li's appearance had dominated the limelight. The person behind the scenes would naturally push out a genius of the same level to even things out. Now that the chaos and the heavenly sun world had begun to merge, people born in the place where the two converged would have completed yin and yang. Those few geniuses were born there. Although they had both completed their yin and yang, they were far inferior to Qi. After all, Qi had perfect yin and yang. The key was the mass of yin and yang energy in his divine soul. All of the top geniuses today had inheritances behind them. Naturally, they were extraordinary. Sect Master, it seems like the Zon Gate sect is no longer at the top of the food chain, Lai Tian said worriedly. The first generation of geniuses were Yi Lingling and Shui Ping. They were the best, far ahead of the other geniuses. There were a few that rose to their level at first, but were soon left behind. Qi and Chu Yu were the most outstanding among the second generation of geniuses. However, among the younger generation of geniuses, there were no disciples of the Zon Gate sect. Once time dragged on, the younger generation might catch up to the disciples of the Zon Gate sect. After all, when one cultivated to a certain level, they would stagnate and be unable to break through. When that happened, they would be surpassed by those who came later. Many geniuses of the new generation had been using the experts of the older generation as stepping stones. The cycle of history was often like this. Among the experts that Yi Lingling had defeated, many of them were once geniuses, but in the end, they all became her stepping stones. Would Yi Lingling face the same problem one day? No one could guarantee that they would not become a stepping stone for the new generation of geniuses. Chu Zan chuckled. Talent isn't the only thing. Not all of the disciples of the Zon Gate sect are invincible. He was very open-minded. How many disciples were there in the Zon Gate sect? How was it possible that every one of them was the strongest and there were no powerful enemies that could defeat them? He only needed to ensure that the Zon Gate sect itself was the strongest, which meant that he himself had to be the strongest. No other power can shake the Zon Gate sect. Lai Tian was stunned to hear this. Chu Zan poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip. Old Lai, there are countless geniuses, yet not all of them can enter our sect. The Zon Gate sect is all about fate. Those who are fated will naturally enter our sect. Entering the Zon Gate sect is the world's greatest opportunity. Even a piece of trash will be transformed into a peerless genius if they join our sect, Chu Zan said meaningfully. Sect Master, I understand. Lai Tian nodded. Sect Master, I have some doubts about my cultivation, Chunlin said at this moment. Lai Tian was also filled with anticipation. He had his doubts as well. In fact, he did not even know how to continue cultivating. Once he reached the Tao Supreme Realm, he felt as if he had reached the end of the path of cultivation. All of your questions will be answered there. Chu Zan looked toward the scripture pavilion. He did not intend to preach the Tao to them. After all, the answers to all their cultivation questions could be found there. Moreover, although Lai Tian and Chunlin were part of the sect, they were not his disciples. Chunlin and Lai Tian followed his gaze. Following that, to their astonishment, they discovered that the scripture pavilion had an additional floor. Could it be? It felt completely unbelievable. If it was really so, then the sect master. The two of them suppressed the shock in their hearts. Sect Master, I'm going to go into secluded cultivation. Call me if there's a mission for me. After Lai Tian finished speaking, he rushed into the scripture pavilion, with Chunlin following closely behind. The two of them tried to go up to the top floor to take a look, but realized that they could not access it. As such, they could only stay on the second highest floor. They looked at the three booklets. Lai Tian raised his hand and grabbed a booklet. The moment he opened it, shock was written all over his face. This booklet contained cultivation methods and details regarding the Supreme Ruler Realm. Moreover, there had only been one booklet here previously, but now there were three. At this time, Chu Zan's voice was heard. You are too far away from this realm. There is no point in studying that booklet. Go back down to the next level. Lai Tian and Chunlin put down the booklets they were holding. Yes, Sect Master. They naturally believed Chu Zan's words. When he went down to the third highest floor, they found that the number of Tao Supreme Realm booklets had increased. After picking up a booklet each, they were soon immersed in reading and cultivating. In the chaos, Heiyu was seated cross-legged, and her body was shrouded in a faint purple radiance. A transcendent aura emanated from her body. She was in a special state, and could envision the shattered supreme laws of the chaos fusing together before being annihilated, and then finally giving birth to a new embryonic form of the supreme laws. At a certain moment, the supreme laws emerged from a certain special space and transformed into the appearance of a divine soul. This soul was blank, and there was nothing within it. Heiyu opened her eyes. Her own soul was the embryonic form of the supreme laws. The chaos had shattered, and the supreme laws had been severed. What did all of this mean? What had happened back then? At this moment, Heiyu was a little confused. Was there anything special about her birth? She looked at the heavenly Tao. Within it, there was a book, which was the Zon Gate Sect Manual. When she held it, she said, "Master, I have some doubts." After a long time, a voice came from the book. What doubts? Chuzan was curious. There were times when Heiyu was confused. With the Zon Gate Sect Manual in her hands, her doubts would naturally not be about her cultivation. Master, where did I come from and why do I exist? Heiyu explained the scene that she had just seen. You are you. Why should you be confused? Even if your divine soul is formed by the supreme laws, you are still you. This is just your good fortune. Chuzan did not expect Heiyu to be confused about this. Where do living beings come from? And where did the ancient chaos gods come from? It all depends on one's good fortune. Since you've seen the source of your fortune, you can comprehend it and use it to lay the foundation for your future cultivation, Chuzan continued. This is a rare opportunity. You have to be firm in your Tao heart. Heiyu listened quietly. Chuzan explained to her, the Tao creation realm is only the beginning. Above the Tao creation realm is the Tao supreme realm. You can complete your yin and yang now and lay down your foundation in preparation to advance to the supreme Tao realm. Heiyu took a deep breath and said, "Thank you for clearing my doubts, Master. I understand. Master, why did the chaos shatter? Is there something special about my origin?" Chuzan smiled and said, "The shattering of the chaos is just a result of someone's scheme. As for your origin, it doesn't matter if it's special or not. Since you're my disciple, no one has the right to interfere with your fate. The integration of the chaos and the heavenly sun world is inevitable to balance yin and yang. You can also enter the game and play with those old guys." Heiyu understood. It did not matter if she was born as a pawn or not. From the day she acknowledged Chuzan as her master, her fate was no longer in anyone's hands. "Master, I know what to do." "That's good." Chuzan's voice disappeared after that. Heiyu stood up and looked at the chaos and the heavenly Tao. The great chaos era, the heavenly sun world was fusing with the chaos to balance yin and yang. How can she be absent from such an exciting situation? After solving Heiyu's confusion, Chuzan observed the situation in the chaos. Like the heavenly sun world, countless geniuses were emerging one after another. The heavenly Tao also produced peerless geniuses, and the competition between them all was intensifying. In an ancient battlefield in the heavenly sun world, Yi Lingling stood on a collapsed mountain peak. She looked at the dozen figures around her. These were all geniuses from several powerful forces. Some of them had joined the law enforcers, while others were those who had lost to her. Now, they had all come to try and kill her, believing that doing so would allow them to break through their shackles and reach a higher realm. Yi Lingling's expression was calm, as an ethereal-looking sword floated behind her. In another place in the heavenly sun world, outside a large city, Shui Ping's aura was like a rainbow as the large saber in his hands flickered. He arrogantly looked on at the dozens of people around him. Just a bunch of trash. Kill. A great battle erupted. The news that the top geniuses had joined forces to attack Yi Lingling and Shui Ping shocked the world. Even though it was embarrassing to bully with numbers, against Yi Lingling and Shui Ping, they had no choice. It was as if everything was natural. All of the geniuses suddenly realized that killing the frontrunners of their generation would give them great fortune and luck, which would help them break through and become stronger. With the rules in place, the Zon Gate sect could not interfere. Otherwise, would that not be destroying the rules that they had upheld? Of course, they could also send their disciples to join forces. However, there were only a few disciples in the Zon Gate sect. Chila and Chuyu were also faced with the same situation. Chuzan sat on the chair leisurely, looking up at the sky. He muttered to himself, "This guy is quite unscrupulous, and doesn't mind ganging up on my disciples." That being said, Chuzan was not surprised by this. It was within Chuzan's expectations that the disciples of the Zon Gate sect would be targeted like this. After all, no one could stand to see others ahead of them. Now, there were two paths forward, which were to rise up and become stronger, or die and become a stepping stone for others. Still, this mysterious force was rather shameless, as it had influenced these geniuses and made them discard their pride to work together like this. Since you don't care about martial virtue, then don't blame me. After all, the rules are set by the strong, Chuzan muttered to himself. He was stronger than the other party, so the rules naturally could not restrict him. However, he did not take action immediately. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping were still able to hold on, so if they could rely on themselves to overcome the current situation, then they would benefit immensely. Qile and Chu Yu were only occasionally targeted and surrounded, as they were simply considered collateral due to their lower cultivation level. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping fought against their opponents every day. When they were in imminent danger, they would immediately escape instead of foolishly continuing to fight. However, even with the Zon Gate sect's concealment technique, they could not hide for too long. They would eventually be found again and there would be another battle. Unfortunately, it was impossible to hide from the mysterious force unless they were as strong as Chuzan. Within the chaos, a great war had already begun between the three chaoses, and countless experts died every day. There were indeed Dao creation realm experts in the other two chaoses, and there were many experts who wanted to occupy the heavenly Dao and seize its fortune. Xiao Liang held his spear and rose into the air to meet the incoming enemy, while Ding Yu charged into enemy lines. The divine world was no longer the same, and was the most powerful world in the chaos. The heavenly Dao had unified its chaos, while the other two chaoses had multiple factions, which gave the heavenly Dao the advantage. Over time, some of the forces in the other two chaoses formed an alliance against the heavenly Dao. As all of this was happening, the chaos and the heavenly sun world continued to slowly fuse and merge. Furthermore, as the situation became more and more intense, the speed of cultivation and the growth of these geniuses accelerated. Under normal circumstances, one would not be able to break through to the Dao Supreme Realm without completing Yin and Yang Realm. Thus, even the strongest geniuses in the chaos and the heavenly sun world would not be able to advance past the Dao creation realm. The chaos lacked Yang, and the heavenly sun world lacked Yin. However, Chuzan had intervened, so his disciples could complete Yin and Yang within the chaos, and thus would be able to advance to the Dao Supreme Realm within the chaos. Time flew by, and another 50,000 years passed. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping had been fighting the entire time, which meant that they had fought for 50,000 years. Naturally, their strength had greatly improved, and they were on the verge of reaching the transcendent Dao realm. However, the cost of all of that fighting was that they were extremely exhausted. They had nowhere to hide, and no time to rest. The fact that they had managed to persevere for this long was a testament to their willpower and talent. Eventually, they returned to the valley in a slightly sorry state. "Greetings, Master." Chuzan took a look at them and nodded in satisfaction. Since that guy did not care about martial virtue, he could not watch his disciples be bullied. It was only right for him to remove a few of the other party's pawns. Chuzan waved his hand and 4 jade talismans appeared in front of the two. The other 2 jade talismans are for Qile and Chu Yu. These jade talismans would help them avoid being tracked when used in conjunction with the Zon Gate sect's concealment technique. Chuzan waved his hand again and 4 small jade mirrors appeared. One for each person. This jade mirror can display the fate of the world and can also absorb the fate of the world. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping were extremely excited. For tens of thousands of years, they had been constantly besieged and hunted down by their enemies. No matter how slow-witted they were, they could tell that something was wrong and that someone was targeting the disciples of the Zon Gate sect. Therefore, the two of them had come back to ask for help. "When I go out this time, I'm going to teach them a lesson." Shui Ping revealed a fierce expression. "Your main target is to kill a few big fishes. The jade mirror will give you hints," Chuzan said. "Yes, Master." Yi Lingling and Shui Ping did not stay any longer and left the valley immediately. Chuzan chuckled. HMPH. Since that person decided to be shameless, it was time for him to suffer some losses. While Yi Lingling and Shui Ping were bust killing, Chuzan also paid attention to the chaos. Ding Yu and the others were strong, and Heiyu's planning worked wonders. The cunning Chu also helped them circumvent any possible weaknesses and removed any potential threats. Chuzan then looked at the origin Great Dao, which was now expanding into the depths of the void region. Sooner or later it would fully envelope the heavenly sun world and the chaos. Chuzan looked at the 3,000 masses of chaotic energy of creation and the worlds that he had opened up. He had some ideas. Perhaps the path beyond the heavenly realm could be derived from the void region. If he combined the internal and external, could he open up a new path? Chu Zan thought that it was worth trying. The external, like the origin Great Tao, had been established and was constantly growing. As for the internal, like the worlds, they were slowly nearing completion as well. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping went on a killing spree and killed a few big fishes. The mysterious force seemed to have withdrawn after that, and no longer influenced the geniuses to hunt them down. This made Chu Zan even more certain that this fellow could not act directly. However, even if the mysterious state that person was in hindered their ability to take action, it also prevented Chu Zan from finding and acting against that person. From this, it could be seen that the reason why those Tao Supreme rulers and Tao Supreme realm cultivators who had yet to die did not set foot in the heavenly sun world was to avoid this mysterious force. Time passed by quickly, and the 800,000-year milestone arrived. Chu Zan's strength had increased by quite a bit. The first world in the masses of chaotic energy of creation had already given birth to a variety of lifeforms, and the number of intelligent lifeforms had also begun to increase. The first human had already created a cultivation technique, and learned how to cultivate. He had reached the heaven realm. In another world, the first life form of this world, a dragon-shaped beast, also seemed to be comprehending the truth of this world, and had also reached the heaven realm. Most of the first intelligent lifeforms of each world were blessed by fate, and were still alive after countless years. There were more types of lifeforms and more vegetation. The food chain and ecosystem of each world was starting to establish itself. At this moment, Chu Zan's strength was equivalent to a middle-stage heavenly realm expert, despite not having broken through. Once he did break through, he would advance straight to the great heavenly realm. Chu Zan actually quite admired that mysterious force. Their methods were impressive, and they had actually managed to figure out how to break through to the next realm. Chu Zan suspected that if the other party emerged from that mysterious state and revealed their true body, the other party would have the strength of a half-step minor heavenly realm expert. As the fighting continued, one genius after another rose. One by one, the powerful cultivators of the older generation became the stepping stones for the rise of the geniuses. One after another, powerful forces were destroyed in the hands of the geniuses or, under the leadership of the geniuses, rose to a new level. In the chaos, the heavenly Tao was continuing to infiltrate and devour the supreme laws of the other two chaoses. The other two chaoses had experts who rose up and unified their respective chaoses. Even so, they were not as strong as the heavenly Tao's side. After all, after joining the heavenly Tao, the stronger the heavenly Tao, the stronger one's own strength would be. The stronger one was, the stronger the heavenly Tao would be. It was a very synergistic relationship. In order to improve their own strength, and strengthen the heavenly Tao, everyone from the heavenly Tao's side tried their best to unify the other chaoses. In any case, even if they died, the reincarnation cycle existed. Therefore, the heavenly Tao was united against the outside world. As for the other two chaoses, even if the overlord had united them, the various experts still had to consider the needs and benefits of their own factions, and were thus easy to divide. The heavenly Tao had roped in a number of experts over the years, who immediately realized the benefits of joining the heavenly Tao. What was the purpose of cultivation? Was it not for the sake of power and eternity? This was easily achievable within the heavenly Tao. Even the spies sent by the forces of the other two chaoses ended up joining the heavenly Tao. Ding Yu stood at the boundary between the chaoses and looked at his opponent coldly. This person was also a sword Tao expert, and this was the 7th time they had crossed swords. Ding Yu, you people from the heavenly Tao are all shameless. You are not worthy of cultivating the supreme sword Tao. The person opposite him had an ashen expression. Ding Yu looked at him indifferently. In his heart, he was cursing. Chu, that shameless guy. He actually seduced the other party's little junior sister and ran away with her. This opponent of his was about to go crazy, which was reflected in his attacks. During the last two exchanges, Ding Yu had actually felt pressured by the other party, who clearly had a crush on his junior sister but had lost her to Chu. How infuriating! On a mountain peak behind Ding Yu, Chu was waving his folding fan in a carefree manner. Beside him stood an elegant, beautiful and refined woman. He was holding a small skewer of meat in his hand and enjoying the delicacy. Your senior brother is too wild and full of hostility toward me. He's so unreasonable. Chu sighed. The world can bear witness to my love for you. I've never let you suffer even the slightest grievance, yet your senior brother is still unwilling to let go. He even treats you like a little girl. Sigh. The woman glanced at Chu. You also said this to the others, right? Yes, Chu said seriously, I may be a little bit of a playboy, but every word I say comes from the bottom of my heart. I'm like this to you, and I'm like this to them too. I have never let anyone down in my life. HMPH, always with these sweet words. In my heart, there is no difference between all of you. You are all my precious lovers, no one is more loved than the other. Strength is everything, I'm stronger, so I'm their senior. Chu glanced at her chest and nodded silently. Looking ahead, Chu sighed once more, your senior brother might not be feeling right. You're his junior sister, but why do I feel like he's treating you like his daughter? Senior brother is too annoying. I can't be bothered with him. There's no end to his nagging. What will I do? Don't worry, as long as I'm here, he won't be able to hurt you. Hong looked into the distance at Chu and the woman, full of admiration. Ancestor Chu was indeed capable. He touched his own swollen face and sighed. That demoness was too rude and unreasonable. She had beaten him up, and he did not have a chance to resist at all. It was time to give up. Further away, Hong Yuanchu was looking at his own ancestor. How embarrassing, he had actually tried to get close to a female expert and failed. If not for Huang Long's timely intervention, he would have been killed. Somewhere in the chaos, Tai hugged his head and squatted on the ground, allowing a violent female expert to punch and kick him. Big sister, I was wrong. I know I was wrong, he screamed. Get up, alright, big sister, lead the way, I'll go take a look at your heavenly Tao. Big sister, come and sit over here. I'll take you there, he patted his shoulder and said. He had already enlarged his body and squatted down in front of her. The woman hesitated before saying, alright. Then, she sat on Tai's shoulder. Tai was extremely excited and joyful as he flew toward the heavenly Tao. It was a success. Brother Chu's teachings were right. Qin's figure appeared within the heavenly Tao. How shameful. He sighed. Everyone had been led astray by Chu. Chu Zan also sighed. This Chu guy, if he was not with a female expert, he was trying to get close to one. Furthermore, his success rate was extremely high. It was almost as if he could read the minds of women. Ding Yu and that person exchanged blows again. This time, Ding Yu had the upper hand. Your sword Tao is not pure, and your heart is wavering. How can the supreme sword Tao be tainted by other things? You, the man's face was ashen. He was actually at a disadvantage. How did Ding Yu improve so quickly? Do you want to know why you're weaker than me? Why? Because I have no woman in my heart. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. The other party was momentarily stunned, and then he flew into a rage. Ding Yu, you dare to mock me? His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like a mad demon. That is the flaw in your sword Tao. Ding Yu's sword flashed as he continued to attack. While he attacked, he said coldly, you only have women in your heart, and your thoughts of them overpower your desire for the sword. Your sword Tao is no longer pure. How are you going to attain the supreme sword Tao? You're not truly cultivating the sword Tao. You're just using it as a cover. Look, even your sword is stifled. You can't display the sharpness of your sword technique because you've placed your junior sister above your sword Tao. With sword strike after sword strike, Ding Yu forced his opponent to retreat. The other party's face was getting paler and paler. No, how is that possible? What I cultivate is the supreme sword Tao. What conflict does it have with my admiration for my junior sister? How can my sword Tao not be pure? Ding Yu advanced step by step, and the other party retreated step by step. Boom, kill. A powerful figure shrouded in golden light appeared and charged forward. Ding Yu, enough of your nonsense. In response, a long spear flashed toward the golden figure. Xiao Liang, Chu Zan put away the talisman and did not continue to observe the situation. There were very few people who cultivated the sword Tao who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Ding Yu. Ding Yu's sword Tao was truly pure. Chu Zan felt that if Ding Yu wanted to break through to the heavenly realm, he would probably need to open up a new path based on the sword Tao. His sword Tao was too pure, and creating worlds like Chu Zan would only negatively impact his focus on his sword Tao. This was not the path that Ding Yu should take. He would have to discover and explore to find his own way forward. That being said, Ding Yu was still a long way away from the heavenly realm, so this could be considered at a later date. What was his final path? He would have to wait until he broke through to the Tao Supreme Ruler realm before he could consider it. His disciple had already grown up and created his own Tao. Chu Zan would only clarify their doubts and would not interfere with the path the disciples would take. He looked at the origin Great Tao, which had no enveloped 1/3 of the heavenly sun world. Over the past 100,000 years, the speed at which the origin Great Tao expanded within the void region had grown faster and faster. It had already formed the embryonic form of the transcendent laws of the void region. The speed at which the chaos and the heavenly sun world fused was also increasing, and along with it, the cultivation speed of the geniuses within them. Moreover, there were also some ancient battlefields and mystic realms appearing recently that contained inheritances and legacies. These attracted countless geniuses to fight for it. Recently, another ancient ruin had appeared, which was rumored to be the tomb of the Azure Dragon, one of the 4 ancient divine beasts. Chuzan was surprised. Could it be that the 4 ancient divine beasts had been killed by that guy for the sake of the plan? If that was the case, then this person had been at it much earlier than he expected. Chuzan looked at the Azure Dragon. Although the 4 divine beasts were a reward from the system, their origins were undoubtedly the same as the 4 ancient divine beasts. It was likely that the 4 divine beasts he had were reincarnations created by the system based on their origin essence. At their peak, the 4 divine beasts had been Tao Supreme rulers. If the mysterious force had been able to kill them back then, his strength should have been quite considerable, and perhaps just below or equal to a minor heavenly realm expert. What a terrifying fellow! Of course, whether or not the remains of the Azure Dragon were in that ancient ruin remained to be seen. With the appearance of this ancient ruin, the geniuses of the Fey race came out in full force. Chuzan looked at the boundary between the chaos and the heavenly world, and discovered that the chaos seemed to be sinking under the heavenly sun world. Yin and Yang, if there were 2 realms, each representing yin and yang respectively, then it was likely that of cultivation, this person also likely wanted to become the ruler of the new world he created. Were the master of the chaos and the others planning to foil this plan? Person was trying to create a reincarnation cycle as well. Chuzan could also guess the reason behind all of this. In addition to opening a new world and path of cultivation, this person also likely wanted to become the ruler of the new world he created. Were the master of the chaos and the others planning to foil this plan? There was too little information available for Chuzan to infer the plans of the parties involved. In any case, he was the true third party here. No one was aware of his existence or of his goals. In that sense, everything was within Chuzan's grasp. He was the real mastermind. Chuzan decided to expand the heavenly Tao plan, and not limit it to the chaos. He wanted the heavenly Tao to replace the transcendent laws of the heavenly sun world and grow to become the only transcendent law of the new world. As for the origin Great Tao, it would become the transcendent law of the void region. As the situation progressed, Yi Lingling and Shui Ping took advantage of the changing times to advance rapidly, as did the other geniuses. Everyone was vying for the inheritances and legacies that were constantly emerging in the ancient battlefields and secret realms. The barriers that separated the sections of the heavenly sun world had disappeared now, and the heavenly sun world had returned to its peak state, and was even starting to expand beyond that. However, it was restricted by the void region, and could only expand slowly. Tens of thousands of years after Yi Lingling and Shui Ping reached the transcendent Tao realm, the geniuses from their generation also broke through thanks to the inheritances and legacies they obtained. One of the Fey race's geniuses obtained the inheritance contained in the ancient ruin that contained the dragon horn of the Azure Dragon. With it in hand, that genius rose to new heights, and was able to defeat and kill many Fey and human geniuses. For a time, the entire heavenly sun world was abuzz thanks to this genius, and many people believed that he had the potential to lead the Fey race to its peak. Shui Ping felt that this person was too arrogant, and decided to bring him down a notch. A huge battle broke out between the two, and even though the other party had the dragon horn, he was still defeated by Shui Ping. However, Shui Ping was unable to kill him, as the dragon horn had once belonged to a Tao Supreme ruler. It was extraordinary. Later on, Yi Lingling and Shui Ping returned to ask Chuzan for pointers, which he gladly provided. Then, the two of them studied the Tao Creation Realm booklets in the scripture pavilion in order to chart their path to the Tao Creation Realm. Their secluded cultivation lasted more than 10,000 years, and during this time, Qila and Chuyu finally began to catch up to the geniuses of the older generation. Another 100,000 years passed, and Qila and Chuyu broke through and reached the transcendent Tao realm. In an ancient ruin, Qila and that Fey race genius had a great battle. The two sides were evenly matched. After all, Qila had just broken through, and that person had the Azure Dragon's horn. Not long after, an ancient ruin containing the legacy of the Black Tortoise was opened. Another Fey race genius arose as a result. In the tens of thousands of years that followed, the tombs and ruins of ancient powerful beings appeared one after another, and many geniuses benefited and rose up in that time, taking full advantage of these opportunities. Many small clans also became prominent as their geniuses prospered and rose to power. Now, the human race was no longer the only dominant race, and they were pressured by the other races and clans. Fortunately, this situation did not last too long, as a tomb of an ancient Tao supreme ruler of the human race opened, whose legacy was obtained by a human genius. However, the newly risen human genius fancied Chu Yu, and provoked Qila and even tried to attack him. As a result, the two sides immediately started fighting. The battle lasted for half a month. In the end, Qila won and severely injured his opponent. He had wanted to kill that person, but the other party managed to escape due to the legacy and treasures obtained from that ancient tomb. A grudge was thus formed. Many of the older generation experts of the human race used this incident to attack Qila and split the human race into factions, causing many geniuses to take sides. After all, the Zon Gate sect was too powerful and its disciples had killed many experts and geniuses. There were many who were jealous. The one who was defeated even declared arrogantly that he would kill Qila if they fought again 10,000 years later. Qila naturally felt pressured, as he realized that the treasures and legacy of these Tao supreme rulers were extraordinary. As such, he and Chu Yu returned to the valley, which gladdened the hearts of Su Shaner and Chunlin. After all, they had raised Qila and Chu Yu. Qila told them about his experiences over the years, and was especially infuriated when he mentioned the genius that had lusted after Chu Yu's beauty and even attempted to use underhanded means. When Su Shaner heard this, she immediately became angry. Chu Yu was formed from a spiritual herb. She was beautiful and refined, untainted by the mortal world. Naturally, there would be many people who admired her. However, it had been obvious from the start and Qila and Chu Yu were a match made in heaven. It was all thanks to Qilis that Chu Yu had been able to gain sentience, transform, and avoid the fate of being made into a dish by Chu Zan. It's just a Tao Supreme ruler's treasure. The Zon Gate sect has plenty of these, Su Shaner snorted, little the next time you see him, just kill him. Teach him the price of his arrogance. Su Shaner waved her hand and threw out a dozen treasures. Little Lei, these are all treasures. You can choose the most suitable ones. The Zon Gate sect doesn't lack treasures. Chunlin was dumbfounded. Was Su Shaner actually this rich? She had casually thrown out a dozen Tao Supreme ruler level treasures. She glanced at Chu Zan, who was sitting on the chair leisurely, reading and eating pastries, and immediately understood. Su Shaner had definitely benefited from staying by Chu Zan's side this entire time. Qila and Chu Yu were stunned as well. The number of Tao Supreme ruler inheritances and treasures that had appeared in the entire heavenly sun world could be counted on one hand. Yi Lingling and Shui Ping, who had been cultivating in seclusion in the scripture pavilion, also came out. Lai Tian also ran out. Looking at all of these treasures, he was extremely envious. In his heart, he felt extremely vexed. Why had he not thought of this before? If he had tried his best to curry favor with Su Shaner, he might have been able to obtain one or two treasures from her. Sister Su, I also lack treasures, Yi Lingling said as she tugged Su Shaner's arm. She was the first to enter the sect from the heavenly sun world, and had a good relationship with Su Shaner. She had the ethereal divine sword, which was very compatible with her. However, it grew in strength in tandem with her own cultivation level, so it had yet to reach the Tao Supreme ruler level yet. You can choose. Su Shaner nodded her head. Shui Ping, who was watching from the side, was scratching his ears and cheeks. He was more embarrassed, as he was a guy, and could not rely on a sisterly relationship to get the good stuff. Of the 4 disciples present, he was the most distant from Su Shaner. After all, Qila and Chu Yu had been raised by Su Shaner. He was tempted by the treasures, but was too embarrassed to ask. Yi Lingling picked out a sword from the dozens of treasures. Just one, Su Shaner asked in surprise. She had no intention of taking back these treasures. Yi Lingling shook her head. One is enough. It's not always better to have more treasures. It's better to have the most suitable ones. Su Shaner nodded her head. Chu Yu's eyes widened as she walked around the pile of treasures. She reached out and touched one item after another, yet she could not find anything that she liked. Qila chose a ring-shaped treasure. Little Lei, how can one be enough? Even if you trap your opponent, you might not be able to kill him without a treasure that's powerful enough. Su Shaner stretched out her hand and took one of the crescent blades, stuffing it into Qili's hands. Sheila took it and put it away, saying, "One to trap and one to kill. That's enough." "All right then." Su Shaner relented. Sheila looked at one of the blood-red sabers. Shui Ping was staring at it, but he was too embarrassed to say anything. Sheila felt a little helpless. Senior brother Shui Ping is just too thin-skinned. He casually took the blood-red saber and stuffed it into Shui Ping's hands. "Senior brother, this saber is very suitable for you." Shui Ping was so excited that he was about to cry. "Thank you, junior brother." However, he still glanced at Su Shaner. Without her permission, he would not accept it. Su Shaner simply rolled her eyes indifferently. When he first entered the sect, she thought that he was smart and knew how to flatter others, but it seemed that all that adventuring had built his muscles but not his brain. Lai Tian's skin was much thicker. "You've all chosen yours, so the rest are mine." He laughed. Su Shaner casually slapped him and sent him flying. "If you want treasures, go ask Sir." Lai Tian was depressed. Naturally, Su Shaner's strength was far inferior to his. However, he did not dare to resist. To put it bluntly, if Su Shaner were to whisper into Chu Zan's ears, he would be the one to suffer. "Little Su, I'm from the older generation of the Zan Gate sect. I founded the sect with your teacher. You're the lady of the celestial sect. When you give out treasures, you should consider me. As the lady of the Zan Gate sect, you should help the sect master with some of his duties." "It's not appropriate for me to look for the sect master for such a small matter," Lai Tian said in a flattering manner. Su Shaner's face immediately broke into a smile. The lady of the Zan Gate sect. That title was very pleasing to the ear. This old fellow was quite good at buttering others up. "Pick one." Lai Tian immediately chose a treasure joyfully. Since Lai Tian had gotten one, Chunlin was naturally allowed to choose as well. In the end, Chu Yu was the only one left who had not chosen anything. "Aunt Shaner, do you have any pretty treasures?" "None of them look good," she said, pouting. She was the first to call Su Shaner aunt. After all, Chu Yu was created by Chu Zan, and Su Shaner had raised Chu Yu. Therefore, it was not appropriate to call her sister. Sheila had originally called her aunt as well, but Su Shaner felt that the title made her sound too old, so she had always asked him to call her big sister. Now that she thought about it, it was better for Sheila to also call her aunt. This way, Su Shaner could be considered to be of the same generation as her master, Chu Zan, and it would also show her close relationship with her master. "Yes, of course there is, dear." Su Shaner rubbed Chu Yu's head lovingly and smiled. "My Yuer is so beautiful, so of course the treasure she uses must be beautiful too." As she spoke, he took out a set of clothes that were as ethereal as clouds. Chu Yu received them delightedly and put them on immediately. Next, Su Shaner took out a jade hairpin and helped Chu Yu put it on. Finally, she took out a lotus-shaped flower which was extraordinarily beautiful. The flower bloomed and the beautiful petals danced around Chu Yu, making her look like a fairy from a painting. Chu Yu was extremely excited. She waved her hand and the petals gathered together to form a flower that spun on her palm. "Thank you, Aunt Su." Chu Yu was still the most favored one. Chu Yu did not even need to refine the treasure to make it recognize her as its master. She could use it directly, although she was unable to unleash its full power. However, when she used it, it did not cause much consumption or put an undue burden on her. It was obvious that the treasure was specially prepared for Chu Yu. Lai Tian went back to continue his secluded cultivation, as did Shui Ping and Yi Lingling. Sheila and Chu Yu had just returned and continued to accompany Chu Zan and Su Shaner to talk about their experiences. "Master." Chu Yu put her arm around Chu Zan's shoulder and acted coquettishly. In her heart, Chu Zan was her father. "Over the past 1,000 years, I've felt something calling out to me. It's as if there's some kind of treasure calling out to me," Chu Yu said with a frown. "Yuer, why didn't you tell me?" Sheila was stunned. "HMPH, Brother La, if I told you, you'd definitely run over to see what's going on. I thought it might be dangerous, so I didn't tell you," Chu Yu scoffed. Sheila was embarrassed. Over the past 10,000 years, he had become very interested in those ancient ruins and secret realms. As his strength increased, he became more and more arrogant in his actions. If Chu Yu were to tell him about it, there was no doubt that he would have gone there. Chu Zan raised his brows. Could it be that there was another spiritual herb with great fortune calling out to Chu Yu? Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that some people were plotting against her. "Yuer, the next time you sense it, you can go and take a look." Chu Zan rubbed her little head. "Master, what should we do if there's danger?" With me around, how could there be any danger? Chu Zan said with a smile. He placed a jade talisman in Chu Yu's hand. Whether it's an opportunity or a scheme, you can go and take a look. Chu Zan was too lazy to use the derivation function. Something that could threaten Chu Yu could not threaten him. However, it was simply wishful thinking for them to plot against Chu Yu. No matter what, Chu Yu was born from his spiritual herb, so it was not an exaggeration to say that she was his stepdaughter. How could he let others scheme against her? If I feel another call, I'll definitely go take a look. Chu Yu stored the jade talisman into her divine soul happily. She then ran off to find Su Shaner. Chu Zan looked at Qila. I understand your doubts. The yin and yang energy in your divine soul is your great fortune, and is a chance for you to create a world. You should start to build a good foundation to create your Tao. Qila listened respectfully. He had come back this time because he had recognized his own shortcomings, which was his lack of understanding of the yin and yang energy in his divine soul. He could not use it properly. Although he was still far from creating his own Tao, he had a feeling that understanding the yin and yang energy was of utmost importance and could prevent him from taking the wrong path. Chu Zan preached the Tao to him, and he gained enlightenment. He then entered the scripture pavilion to read the Tao Creation Realm booklet and entered seclusion to comprehend it. He wanted to use the yin and yang energy to lay the foundation for the Tao Creation Realm. In the Heavenly Sun world, the disappearance of the Zon Gate sect's disciples gave the other geniuses a chance to show off their might. Recently, there were 3 human geniuses that were starting to gather the power of the human race and recruit geniuses under their banner. Despite being the most powerful race, humans were not unified, but things were starting to come together, as everyone gathered within one of the 3 great factions under the 3 geniuses. It was the same for the Fey race, whose geniuses were starting to form alliances. The Heavenly Sun world was divided into 3 camps, which were the humans, the Fey, and the unaffiliated. The human race was the strongest for the time being, but they did not have the power to suppress the other 2 camps. Eventually, it became a battle between 3 major factions. The 3 great geniuses of the human race gathered others together in the name of the human race, but they were also secretly competing with each other to be the one to unite the human race and seize great fortune. As the situation in the Heavenly Sun world continued to progress, things in the chaos were also developing. The Heavenly Tao continued its spread to the other 2 chaoses, which had already formed an alliance. Amidst the ensuing battles, Ding Yu emerged as the #1 Sword Tao expert in the chaos. Xiao Liang was not to be outdone either, and continued to hone his battle soul through fire and flames. Demon Buddha traveled the chaos, spreading Buddhism and enlightening one person after another. Hu Tianya displayed the might of a divine beast and was championing the cause of unifying the monster races in the chaos under the Heavenly Tao's banner. The ghost race was also rising, and Chu Pingfan's extreme Tao had risen to fame as he ran rampant throughout the chaos. Chu Zan took out the Heavenly Tao talisman and sent a wisp of his consciousness into the Heavenly Tao. There, he preached the Tao to Ding Yu and his other disciples and passed them treasures as well. This was all done to speed up the growth and development of the Heavenly Tao. Ding Yu had created his Tao a long time ago, and he was now not too far away from the Tao Supreme Realm. Furthermore, he had already completed his yin and yang within the Heavenly Tao. The Great Chaos era would soon truly arrive. As for whether there were any schemes in the chaos, Chu Zan did not care. He believed that the master of the chaos must have left something behind, but since he was not present in the chaos, he could not investigate the matter. With Chu Zan's intervention, the Heavenly Tao developed even faster, and the Divine World cemented its position as the #1 world in the chaos. The Heavenly Tao also gave birth to more and more geniuses as it controlled a larger portion of the power and fate energy of the chaos. The Heavenly Tao was on track to unify the chaos. With the fusion of the chaos and the Heavenly Sun world, the time flow between the 2 realms continued to be streamlined. Time passed, and another 100,000 years passed. Soon, the million-year milestone would arrive. During this time, the disciples of the Zon Gate sect had been absent from the Heavenly Sun world for over 100,000 years. The human race still had 3 major factions, and the Fey race also had its own factions. The unaffiliated cultivators faction was still present as well. Everything had been going back and forth for countless years, and everyone was striving to break through to the Tao Creation realm, as that would tip the balance between the various factions and possibly lead to the unification of the Heavenly Sun world. The genius who had once coveted Chu Yu was searching for traces of Qila and Chu Yu, as well as the location of the Zon Gate sect. However, he found nothing. It was as if the Zongate sect did not exist in this world, and it made the sect appear even more mysterious. The small valley seemed to be detached from the heavenly sun world. No matter how chaotic the outside world was, no matter how intense the conflicts were, it could not affect this small valley. Lai Tian came out of the scripture pavilion. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Reaching the Tao Supreme Ruler realm is really difficult, he sighed. He had not even touched the edge of the Tao Supreme Ruler realm, and he felt as if his cultivation path had reached its end. If it was not for the fact that his strength had increased over the past 10,000 years, he would have been convinced that this was the case. Chu Zan glanced at him and ignored him. He wanted to break through to the Tao Supreme Ruler realm in 100,000 years. Even if he obtained great fortune, such a feat was not possible. Even Qila, who was vastly more talented than Lai Tian, would not be able to achieve that. Out of 100 Supreme Realm experts, perhaps not a single one would break through and reach the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. It was that difficult. Fortunately for Lai Tian and the others, the scripture pavilion contained Tao Supreme Ruler realm booklets, which could guide them to the right path and assist their cultivation and comprehension. However, it only increased their chances of breaking through. Not everyone could break through, especially within such a short time frame. Chunlin had also ended her secluded cultivation. She too was in the same situation as Lai Tian, and was finding it difficult to chart her path to the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. The level of difficulty was the reason why Tao Supreme Rulers were considered legends, and anyone who could reach this realm was considered a monster. For example, the legendary ruler of the Heavenly Sun world and the Master of the Chaos. Their levels of talent had to be sky high. Furthermore, talent was not the only factor. It was likely that they were lucky and fated enough to encounter various opportunities and legacies that allowed them to comprehend the path to the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. Without these opportunities, they would likely have never reached the Tao Supreme Ruler realm, and the realm itself would have simply continued to only exist in legends. Chu Zan rolled his eyes. Without the Zongate Scripture Pavilion's booklets, even the Tao Supreme realm would have been unattainable for Lai Tian and Chunlin. Lai Tian looked outside the courtyard at the white tiger lying in the ancient forest. Its aura had already become unfathomable. Could it be that the white tiger was already a Tao Supreme Ruler? It was the same for the lazy-looking heavenly spirit cat lying by Chu Zan's feet. He could not sense its cultivation either. Sect Master, how strong are your pets? Lai Tian asked with a sorrowful expression. He was not sure if he wanted to hear the answer. The cat and the rock have already reached the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. Chu Zan glanced at the spirit-devouring flower in the courtyard and said, it's almost there as well. Then, he looked at the white tiger in the ancient forest. The 4 divine beasts are almost there too. Lai Tian sighed. Sect Master, how long do you think you'll need to break through? Don't aim too high. It's already a great fortune for you to have reached the Tao Supreme realm. The more anxious and impatient you are, the harder it is to reach the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. You two haven't even reached the peak of the Tao Supreme realm, yet you want to break through and reach the Tao Supreme Ruler realm. You're like newborn babies who don't know how to crawl, but want to fly into the sky. Chu Zan patted Lai Tian's head a few times and continued, reach the peak of the Tao Supreme realm, then you can think about what comes after. Otherwise, you will never reach the Tao Supreme Ruler realm in your lifetime. Lai Tian was stunned. Thank you for your reminder, Sect Master. I've taken the wrong path, he said. Thank you for your guidance, Sect Master. I understand, said Chunlin respectfully. Chu Zan nodded. It's good that you understand. There's no need to keep comparing yourselves to others. Cultivate at your own pace. Lai Tian and Chunlin smiled bitterly. They had to admit that compared to Chu Zan's personal disciples, the two of them were rather mediocre. Little Yi, you're about to create your own Tao, right? Lai Tian looked at a certain place in the valley and sighed with emotion. A Tao creation realm expert who was not even 1,000,000 years old. They are almost done, Chu Zan said with a yawn. Yi Lingling and the other 3 disciples were about to create their own Taos. Chunlin looked at a certain wooden house, where Su Shaner was in seclusion to break through. She was about to reach the Tao Supreme realm. I'm going out to take a walk and check out what's going on outside. Lai Tian had just ended his secluded cultivation and was not in the mood to continue. It was the same for Chunlin. Thus, the two of them left the valley. As Tao Supreme Realm experts, there was very little in the Heavenly Sun world that could threaten them. Eventually, Su Shaner broke through and reached the Tao Supreme realm. Although she did not spend much time cultivating, she was constantly nourished by Chu Zan's aura. Now, she had surpassed Ding Yu and the other disciples in terms of cultivation level. Another 10,000 years passed, and Chunlin and Lai Tian returned. I can feel that a war is about to break out. I wonder if the human race can continue to reign supreme when that happens, Lai Tian said. It shouldn't be a big problem. Chunlin looked toward where Yi Lingling and the other three were cultivating in seclusion, and then she and Lai Tian also resumed their secluded cultivation. This time, the two of them only looked at the Tao Supreme Realm booklets. Chu Zan looked up at the sky and sighed. That mysterious force was really quite unfathomable. Chu Zan's strength had continued growing, and he was now about as strong as an advanced stage minor heavenly realm expert. Despite this, he could find no traces of this person. It was as if he was ethereal and did not exist in this world. Chu Zan found it to be quite amazing. It was no wonder this person could scheme against Tao Supreme rulers. Chu Zan now suspected that the Tao Supreme rulers were out in the void region. Other than seeking a chance to break through and find a new path, the other important reason was probably to avoid this mysterious force. Even with Chu Zan's current strength, he could not catch even a trace of its existence, much less the other Tao Supreme rulers. The Great Chaos Era had arrived, and the battles into the chaos were much more intense and frequent than in the Heavenly Sun world. However, Chu Zan was almost certain that the Heavenly Tao would emerge victorious over the other two chaoses. Rather than that, he was now looking forward to the arrival of the million-year milestone and its corresponding rewards. Would it allow him to break through to the Great Heavenly Realm? 1,000 years later, Yi Lingling began her breakthrough to the Tao Creation Realm. In the chaos, Ding Yu was already preparing to break through and reach the Tao Supreme Realm. Ding Yu's breakthrough would make him the first Tao Supreme Realm expert in the chaos. Once it was complete, suppressing the forces of the other two chaoses would be a piece of cake. The Heavenly Tao also began to change and strengthen once again. At this moment, something in the chaos suddenly changed. It was beyond Chu Zan's expectations. In the divine world, in the Chu family's territory. The Chu family had, over time, become a major clan, and ruled over much of the southern region. They were still left alone by the outside world, but now, the Chu family seemed to be under some restrictions. After many years had passed, the Chu family was no longer the same as before. Their numbers seemed to have dwindled, which was unusual. Most families with such long histories would have countless descendants spanning many generations. However, the Chu family currently had less than 1,000 descendants. After Chu Tianming, 9 generations of leaders had come and gone. The youngest generation of the Chu family was the 9th generation of Chu Tianming's descendants. Chu Tianming was very confused, but he could not find out the reason why the Chu family had so few members. Chu Yun did not notice anything amiss. Although the Chu family was small, their legacy was preserved, and they were becoming more and more prosperous. The talents of the younger generation were also very outstanding. Chu Tianming had broken through to the Chaos Supreme Realm not too long ago. However, in the current Great Chaos Era, Chaos Supreme Realm experts were insignificant. The current pinnacle of the chaos was the Tao Creation Realm. However, Chu Tianming was still very satisfied with his progress. Something unexpected and strange had happened today. A ball of purple light appeared in front of Chu Tianming, which seemed to contain a transcendent aura. Looking at the purple light in front of him, Chu Tianming fell into a dazed state. Memories from long ago resurfaced in his mind at this moment. When his third son, Chu Chuluo, was born, there was a purple light. Even though a long time had passed, Chu Tianming still often thought about his third son, though he believed that he would never see the latter again. He could not even see his grandson, Chu Zan anymore, and regretted banishing Chu Zan to the small courtyard in a moment of anger. The small courtyard was still intact. By now, Chu Tianming naturally knew that Chu Zan was no longer a piece of trash. When the purple light appeared in front of him, a figure gradually condensed within it, revealing the appearance of a cold and arrogant woman with unparalleled beauty. She was as cold and expressionless as when they first met. Chu Tianming looked at the figure in silence. It was Chu Zan's mother. When Chu Chuluo had brought this woman back, he had not been so angry. In fact, the fact that his son had broken the marriage contract with the Qin family was still somewhat bearable too. What he could not stand was how arrogant and cold she was. She did not even bow to him, her father-in-law. It was as if she did not respect him. Chu Tianming was furious. However, since Chu Chuluo liked her, he had to bear with it. Chu Tianming truly loved his third son. In the end, she gave birth to a useless son, Chu Zan, which further incensed him. Every time he looked at Chu Zan, he would be reminded of her, and how she had ruined his third son's future. The woman in the purple light was expressionless. She asked coldly, "Where's my son Chu Zan?" Chu Tianming's face darkened. Even though he was surprised by her sudden appearance, he remained expressionless. "I don't know." The woman was silent. Then, a ball of faint golden light appeared before Chu Tianming's eyes. A figure appeared from the golden light, which immediately made Chu Tianming jump up in excitement. "Luer, you're back. Father, where is Xuaner?" "I really don't know. I have no idea where he went," Chu Tianming sighed helplessly. The two figures were silent. "Luer, don't worry, he'll be fine, he's actually very strong," Chu Tianming explained. "Father, who is the most talented person in the Chu family?" Chu Chuluo asked with a sigh. "Yuner and Faner." In terms of talent, Chu Pingfan and Chu Yun were the two most talented people in the Chu family. Now, Chu Yun was close to reaching the Tao creation realm. The purple light and the golden light fused together at this moment, transforming into a special law that contained a transcendent aura. "Father, we can't afford to lose the chaos. Ask Chu Yun and Chu Pingfan to return." Chu Chuluo's voice was heard. "You can control one of the supreme laws. Luer, where are you?" Chu Tianming asked. Then, he asked in confusion, "What kind of existence are you? Am I really your father?" He was no longer a weakling, and knew quite a lot of secrets. From Chu Chuluo's birth to his disappearance, to his sudden appearance here. All of this pointed to the fact that his son was extraordinary. There had to be something going on here. Moreover, it seemed to involve the entire chaos. Compared to those top experts, who was Chu Tianming? He had an ordinary level of talent, and it was already quite the achievement that he had managed to reach this level. How could he be Chu Chuluo's father? Chu Tianming felt bitter in his heart. He finally understood why Chu Chuluo's wife was so cold and arrogant toward him. To these transcendent existences, what was the difference between him and an ant? Chu Tianming's expression was desolate, and his heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. "I'm beyond the primordial chaos. Of course you are my father," Chu Chuluo sighed and said. The woman in the purple light snorted coldly. "If you weren't so arrogant, you wouldn't be like this." Chu Tianming's eyes went blank when he heard that. "My name is Chu Luo, and her name is Zan Chu. In the past, there was an accident, and my father died. His origin essence fell into the chaos. You are his reincarnation." Chu Chuluo, or rather Chu Luo, looked helplessly at Chu Tianming. Chu Tianming's heart trembled. It seemed that he used to be an expert. Chu Luo continued, "Father, I don't know if you can recover your memories, but we can't lose the chaos. You must try your best to control it." This was originally supposed to be Xuaner's job, but Chu Luo felt helpless. Things were getting out of hand now. "I understand." After Chu Tianming learned that Chu Luo was truly his son, his spirits were lifted, and his eyes glowed with a domineering aura. "So I'm actually the ancestor of the chaos, Chu family. Chu is actually my descendant." Chu Tianming's expression grew excited as he spoke. Chu Luo was exasperated. Despite being reborn, his father was still so unreliable. The main point here was the chaos. Chu was indeed a descendant of Chu Tianming and had the latter's bloodline, but was this important right now? Zan Chu's face was still cold. "Father, remember to summon Chu Yun and Chu Pingfan." Since Chu Zan had disappeared, he had to make do and let Chu Yun and Chu Pingfan take over the supreme laws. Chu Luo and Zan Chu disappeared, leaving only a haze of purple gold light behind. Chu Luo, Zan Chu, Chu Chuluo, Chu Zan. Chu Tianming muttered to himself. The purple gold light entered his body, and Chu Tianming's aura began to surge. His entire being began to transform, and it felt like he had the power to control the entire chaos. With a loud laugh, Chu Tianming's body emitted purple gold light and he rushed out of the divine world into the chaos. As his aura swept out, and even the heavenly Tao began to tremble. "Chu, you little brat, I'm your ancestor. Come and greet me." Somewhere in the chaos, Chu was dumbfounded. Chu Yun and Chu Pingfan appeared instantly, both looking at Chu Tianming in a daze. "Haha, the chaos must be unified." Chu Tianming laughed maniacally. He stepped forward, wanting to control the supreme laws of chaos. Two purple gold rays of light entered Chu Yun and Chu Pingfan's bodies. At this moment, the heavenly Tao trembled, and its fate energy shone like a rainbow. It was actually in defensive mode. The heavenly Tao seals and heavenly Tao fate energy within Chu Pingfan and Chu Yun's bodies began to change, and were about to be devoured by the purple gold light. The purple gold light was trying to use them as a bridge to connect to the heavenly Tao. This sudden change shook the entire chaos. The battle between the geniuses instantly stopped and they returned to their own camps. In the heavenly Tao, the figures of Ding Yu, He Yu, and the others appeared. Qin and Feng Yan both appeared as well, their expressions grave as they looked at the insolent Chu Tianming. It was as if the heavenly Tao was facing a great enemy. A supreme law was spreading, and it was about to surpass the heavenly Tao and the other supreme laws of the other two chaoses, trying to become the only supreme law of the chaos. If it succeeded, the heavenly Tao would be bound by it and become a subordinate supreme law. The change came too suddenly. Ding Yu was about to break through to the Tao Supreme Realm, and the heavenly Tao was actually very close to unifying the chaos. No one expected there to be such a sudden change. What's going on? Ding Yu was confused. What did this old man do and why? It did not seem to be his master's doing. He Yu also frowned. She did not know how to deal with it. After all, Chu Tianming was still her master's grandfather. What is this heavenly Tao? How can it unify the primordial chaos? Other than my supreme law, no one can unify the chaos. Chu Tianming was extremely excited. He had finally become a super expert. He had to control the chaos. There was no room for mistakes. The purple gold light glowed within the chaos, and the supreme law swept toward the heavenly Tao. Chu Yun's expression changed and she hurriedly stopped him. Grandpa, the heavenly Tao was created by 13th brother. Chu Tianming's eyes widened. That brat Chu Zan did this. Yes. Chu Yun nodded, leaving Chu Tianming speechless. He was conflicted on what to do. If Chu Zan had not disappeared, the one who controlled the supreme law he was using should have been Chu Zan. Chu Tianming sighed. Chu Yun and Chu Pingfan had also grasped a portion of the supreme law, but clearly, the two of them would not allow the heavenly Tao to be devoured. They would most likely merge their portion of the supreme law with the heavenly Tao and help it grow. Forget it. I'll merge with the heavenly Tao then, Chu Tianming then said angrily. What am I supposed to do if I merge with the heavenly Tao? I need to control the power of heavenly Tao. Once the supreme law was integrated into the heavenly Tao, and he was deprived of its power, he would become a chaos supreme realm cultivator again. After experiencing such power, he could not accept being weak again. Furthermore, he was supposed to be Chu's ancestor. Without sufficient strength, how could he play that role properly? Where's Chu Zan? Ask him to give me the power of heavenly Tao. Chu Tianming looked at Chu Yun, who had a helpless expression on her face. She had no way to contact Chu Zan, so she looked toward He Yu, who was equally at a loss. It was too difficult to contact Chu Zan, and it was usually him who contacted them. There was no change in the Zan Gate sect's manual, which meant that she could not contact Chu Zan through it. Chu Zan had been waiting for the million-year milestone to arrive when the sudden change occurred. The heavenly Tao was actually being threatened. He immediately took out the heavenly Tao talisman and sent a wisp of his consciousness into the heavenly Tao. In the end, he saw the old man showing off his might. How had this guy controlled that supreme law? Then, after looking closely, he realized that it was a supreme law from the ancient Great Chaos era, and that there were special runes within Chu Tianming's divine soul that allowed him to connect to the supreme law. He sighed in his heart. This seemed to be his father's doing. How mysterious. From his birth to his disappearance, everything about his father seemed unusual. His mother was the same. Could it be that his father was the master of the chaos? Where did the system come from? Did his father leave this for him? On second thought, the possibility of this being the case was not high. The system had already surpassed the Tao Supreme Ruler realm, and it even seemed like it could surpass the heavenly realm. Derive the origin of the system. Chu Zan tried to use the system's derivation function. The system is unable to derive. Seeing the result, Chu Zan was not disappointed. It was within his expectations. Derive the karmic relationship between the system and Chu Chuluo. None. As he had expected, the system had nothing to do with Chu Chuluo. Derive the karmic relationship between the system and my mother. None. Seeing the result, Chu Zan heaved a sigh of relief. Since the system had nothing to do with his parents, it meant that it was something unique to him and that it was not something created that someone could use to control or influence him. Derive the karmic relationship between the system and me. Fate is wonderful beyond words. Chu Zan sighed at that cryptic answer, and did not continue to pursue the matter. Fate was really wonderful. Where is Chu Chuluo? Is he the master of the chaos? At this point, Chu Zan decided to investigate his parents, instead. Chu Chuluo is not the master of the chaos. He is not in the chaos or heavenly sun world. Chu Zan was startled. Was he wrong? Derive my mother's background, identity, and whereabouts. An image projection appeared in Chu Zan's mind. He could see a cold and arrogant woman who was dressed in purple, looking otherworldly and peerless. Your mother is Zan Chu, and the ancient master of the chaos. She's not in heavenly sun world or the chaos. Ah, so his mother was the master of the chaos. Then what was Chu Chuluo's status? Chu Zan did not probe further. This was not important, and he already had some of his own conjectures. Since the two of them were not in heavenly sun world or the chaos, they were obviously in the void region. Deriving anything about the void region would require the consumption of origin energy. Instead, he looked at the heavenly Tao. The supreme law of the ancient great chaos era had reappeared. If there were no accidents, it would naturally control the current chaos. As expected, the master of the chaos had left behind a backup plan, and would not allow chaos to fall into someone else's hands. That way, even if the new world was created, his mother would still control the chaos and would be able to fight against that mysterious force. However, the ancient supreme law was obviously incomplete, as it had been damaged when the chaos was shattered. In this new era, the chaos had not been unified yet, so it was the perfect opportunity to unify the chaos and control the supreme laws, using them to restore the ancient supreme law. Now, Chu Tianming wanted to merge the supreme law into the heavenly Tao, but Chu Zan was in no hurry to appear. He was waiting. How could that mysterious force not have made preparations to counteract his mother's plan? Since the ancient supreme law had appeared, that person's scheme should have also been triggered, right? Sure enough, in the chaos, a beam of orange light bloomed, suppressing Chu Tianming's supreme law. An expert appeared. However, his eyes were orange and emotionless. Everyone was shocked, because the person who had arrived was the leader of one of the three great factions. He was extremely powerful, and one of the few who could stand up to Ding Yu. This person was the biggest obstacle to the heavenly Tao's unification of the chaos. Zan Chu, Chu Luo, we've been waiting for you. His voice was hoarse, and it was not his original voice. Chu Tianming's expression turned grave. The purple gold light blossomed around his body, as he felt a strong sense of danger. Chu Yun and Chu Pingfan were the same, and they immediately gathered around Chu Tianming to combine their power to resist the danger of that unknown existence. How can a shattered supreme law stop me? The man stared coldly at Chu Tianming and the other two. Hee, Zan Chu and Chu Luo only left behind wisps of their consciousness. Now that they've disappeared, the chaos is mine. The orange light intensified, and the power of another ancient supreme law erupted. It seemed that this person had gathered and controlled the other part of the supreme law when it was damaged in the great battle back then. However, in terms of strength, this person was stronger than Chu Tianming. Heiyu frowned, and a faint purple light emanated from her body. Cheng, you're not Cheng. Yes and no. Cheng looked at Heiyu and suddenly laughed. Very good, everything is complete. The newborn chaos should be mine. Chu Zan had been watching. Would there be another third party? Probably not, right? Well, he was probably that third party. Cheng was very strong, and had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Of course, Zan Chu and Chu Luo were not totally unprepared for this. Chu Zan sensed that at the edge of the chaos, there was a hidden power that was in a state of accumulation, waiting for an opportunity to deal a fatal blow to Cheng and turn the tide. Of course, whether or not Cheng had other backup plans remained to be seen. None of this was important as he was about to take action. Chu Zan first set up a barrier around the chaos, making it impossible for the mysterious existence to spy on what was going on in the chaos. Once that person's plan failed, they would attribute it to Chu Luo and Zan Chu. He did not plan to let others know of his existence. At this moment, the heavenly Tao suddenly churned, as worldly phenomena erupted. Cheng's gaze was grave as he stared at the heavenly Tao. Chu Luo, Zan Chu, is this your backup plan? Unfortunately, it's too weak. The current heavenly Tao was indeed weak, but the worldly phenomena spread out of the heavenly Tao anyway and enveloped Cheng. No, who are you? Cheng suddenly exclaimed. However, the exclamations could only be heard from inside. No one outside knew what was going on inside. Heiyu and the others, however, heaved a sigh of relief. They could tell that these phenomena were naturally the doing of their master. By the time the heavenly Tao calmed down, Cheng had already disappeared. The portion of the ancient supreme law that he controlled was currently being integrated into the heavenly Tao. An illusionary figure then appeared. Old man, hand over the supreme law. Seeing Chu Tianming's feelings were complicated. The purple gold light flew out and entered the heavenly Tao. What about the power of heavenly Tao? Give me the power of the heavenly Tao. Without the supreme law, he was weak. Here you go. A heavenly Tao seal entered Chu Tianming's body. Then, Chu Zan looked at Heiyu and the others. The power of yin and yang is about to intersect. Make your preparations swiftly. Yes, master, Ding Yu and the others said respectfully. Chu Zan looked at Ding Yu and said, after you break through to the Tao Supreme Realm, you can come to the Heavenly Sun world. Master, don't worry, I'll be able to break through very soon. Chu Zan's illusory figure then disappeared, and the Heavenly Tao regained its calm. The Heavenly Tao was now transforming after being imbued with the power of the ancient Supreme Law. Now, it would face no obstacles unifying the chaos. It was simply a matter of time. After dealing with the situation in the chaos, Chu Zan started to think again. He still could not trace the whereabouts of that mysterious force, which was quite terrifying in and of itself. Chu Zan was clearly stronger, but could do nothing about the person. He could only foil that person's schemes. That person's methods were brilliant and truly amazing. Chu Zan had used the heavenly Tao to exterminate Cheng, but was still unable to trace the karmic threads between Cheng and that person. He could not afford to underestimate him. Chu Zan sighed in his heart. He had relied on the system to surpass the Tao Supreme Ruler realm, while this person was trying to do so using his own hard work and intelligence. Moreover, Chu Zan suspected that this person was the first Tao Supreme Ruler to ever exist. Derive the origin and past of this mysterious person. An image projection appeared in his mind, displaying an indescribably majestic being whose entire body emitted the light of the sun. How, the first ruler of the heavenly sun world, the pioneer of the transcendent Tao path, the pioneer of the Tao creation path, the pioneer of the Tao supreme path and the pioneer of the Tao supreme ruler realm. Despite being born with a weak body, he managed to devour the spiritual energy of the chaos, snatch the chaotic energy creation of the heavenly sun world, and become the ruler of the heavenly sun world. Chu Zan looked at the system's description and the image incredulously. How was really amazing. What a terrifying fellow. Furthermore, he was the first living being born after the creation of the heavenly sun world and the chaos, and had thus seized the good fortune of heavenly sun world and the chaos. He was the pioneer of many cultivation realms, and the cultivators who came later all followed in his footsteps. Without Chu Zan's interference, Hao would probably become the pioneer of the heavenly realm too. Then, he spotted an important piece of information. He travels the void region to gain enlightenment, and possesses the void pearl, which allows him to transform into nothingness. The void pearl. This was why Hao could not be traced by karma or fate. It was as if he did not exist. This ability had to be related to the void pearl, which was undoubtedly an extraordinary treasure. Chu Zan had no choice but to be cautious. This treasure was most likely obtained in the void region, but how did Hao obtain it? Could it be that there were other treasures in the void region waiting to be discovered? Chu Zan frowned. The void region was filled with nothingness, but it existed in an indescribable way. Since it existed, it meant that it was not really nothingness. Perhaps he was not strong enough to delve into the secrets of the void region, but he was certain that there were various mysteries within it. The void region probably had something to do with the creation of the heavenly sun world and the chaos. Derive the origin and function of the void pearl. Deriving this information will consume 1,000th of your origin energy. Do you wish to continue? As expected, the void pearl was not simple. He declined, and instead said, derive what would happen if I were to be attacked by someone using the void pearl. Chu Zan changed his approach. He wanted to see if the void pearl was a threat to him. It cannot be derived. Did this mean, there could only be one reason, which was that the void pearl was not an offensive type treasure. Since it was not an offensive type treasure, the level of threat would naturally be much lower. Chu Zan heaved a sigh of relief. The million-year milestone would soon arrive. Once he broke through and reached the heavenly realm, he would no longer have to fear Hao's threat. Even the void pearl would not be able to threaten him. When looked out at the void region, he saw that the origin great Tao was about to envelop the heavenly sun world and the chaos. The heavenly Tao was also transforming, and Ding Yu was currently breaking through to the Tao supreme realm. Everything was under control. Yi Lingling was also in the process of creating her Tao, and the heavenly sun world still had three major factions. The yin and yang forces intertwined, and the birth of the new world was at hand. Hao had probably already found a new path, and might even be preparing for a breakthrough. The next battle for power would be where yin and yang intersected. After Yi Lingling's breakthrough, she would be dispatched there. The disciples of the Zon Gate sect had the advantage, and they would benefit the most from this. After the birth of the New World, the Zon Gate sect would rise and truly become unparalleled. Chu Zon yawned and lay on the chair, pretending to sleep. He just had to continue staying in the valley. Soon, he would be truly invincible. In fact, excluding the possible threat of the Void Pearl, he was already invincible. The only thing left was the Void region, which remained unfathomable. He truly wondered what secrets it held. Still, he could not be careless. He had to continue to stay at home. In an unknown place in the Void region, there was a small black spot. The black dot in the Void region was like a drop in the ocean. It was a mountain peak that stood 10,000 feet tall, and on it were pavilions and verdant ancient trees. On the peak, Zon Chu, who was wearing a purple dress, looked out at the Void region outside the peak with a cold expression. It had been a long time since that incident.